Yes, it's still the big one, and we're talking about multiple taxation and trying to address the impact it has on Nigerians and Nigerian businesses and how much of a problem it seems to be, especially with that very presentation yesterday of the committee telling Mr. President more needs to be done, especially to improve the business climate in the country and pruning down or reducing down the number of taxes from which is 200 to about 10. And putting a whole 190 away from it. But I don't know, we're not away from the discussion, but actually doing it, and I see have no other person but coming. I don't know who is also a member of the Chartered Taxation of Nigeria, helping out with the discussion. But you do know we're not taxing it, but rather going to it, and we're going to get a message from our sponsors. We're talking about Benita Gas, located right here in Ughelli, Okokoko, Warri, and the environs. And when we come back, more discussion centered on the big story for today.
Oh, yeah, follow Uno Road, auto better quality. If you dey talk gas matter, oh, yeah, follow Beneta. Gas with the better quality, Beneta gas. Gas where they full rich man to Beneta gas. Oh, delivery brother na sharply. Beneta gas. For Beneta gas, no mango. Beneta gas. Get different type of gas cylinder. Beneta. I mean, that kind gas wey go last you well. Beneta gas matter, Beneta now dogu. Beneta gas service in a them they run. Beneta make you carry go.
For gas matter and home delivery, make you wire Beneta gas plant for 080-6745-7890 and 080-5904-7722. Beneta gas plant, the tequila of gas matters.
Well, you know, you can also bring those business and your services right here to Quest today, and let's see how we can do business and make it also contribute to improving not just your sector, but the sector of the country itself. But anyway, we're still talking about it, and the big story for today, we're talking about the issue of multiple taxation and how that seems to be a problem and a need for both, not just the federal, but state and local government to do something about it, knowing that Nigerians are already going through a whole lot of difficult times, and pulling down the number of taxes they seem to pay would greatly reduce and also see how it can elevate most of our businesses that seems to be in one of the most difficult times ever. But anyway, before we went on the break, we talked extensively about that very recommendation coming from the committee, as much as they had to really submit that report yesterday to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his promise of doing something about it. But let's quickly come back to it. And Comrade Adomo, let's look at it. Now, specifically, one of the sectors that seems they are the most taxed in Nigeria will be the telecommunications sector. And they say they have about 40 taxes that they seem to pay both at the federal, state, and local government level. But anyway, as much as they say that, other businesses will also argue, saying that, well, they also feel overburdened with the issue of multiple taxation. But let's come to it, because I really want us to understand the impact. So at least those at home will truly understand the reason why that seems to be on the front burner, especially on many discourse. If you look at the papers today, almost all papers seem to have that as a major headline, looking at the issue of multiple taxation and how it has been hurting so many businesses. But that's the question I rather want to ask you, and I want you to take us through your thoughts on it. How much of an impact have this had on the lives of ordinary Nigerians and their businesses?
Yes.
For us to truly understand the need to talk about it.
You know, if you are into production or manufacturing, for example, when your goods land at the port, they will pay what is called import duties. When they go for inspection, you will have to still pay tax there. When it comes to your warehouse, you still need to pay taxes on you pay the company contract revenue, you pay the the payee, and the implication of all this is not the actual money that you pay alone that is the tax. But there are things they call the incidence of taxes. The cost of you paying those taxes is also a tax on you, and you are in business. You don't want to make losses. Nobody make profit. Set up a business to make losses. For every tax you pay, you build it into the company expenses, and that is where you now start talking of your break-even point. You can only break even when your profit level that is your production level is almost equal, your cost of a fixed asset, then anything that goes on top of it becomes your profit at the end of the day.
Of course.
But if you cannot even get to break-even point, how do you make your profit? Look at so many companies that have closed up. They complain so much that what they get from the market is minute to what they spend. Like the textile industry. How many of them remain in the business now? Almost all of them are gone. Now let's come to the other side of it. How can you now be in business? You are making a profit of 10 million naira in a month, and you are paying more than 8.5 million naira as taxes, just 1.5. How do you maintain your equipment with that 1.5? That is why many people will tell you that there is no need doing such businesses, because you cannot be.
So how does that affect ordinary Nigerians?
When you go out of business, if I cannot buy because the product is not there, has it not affected me directly? If the few ones that are there, the people that are able to sustain themselves, then you have about 1 million people chasing about 1,000 goods. And what does that lead to? Spiral inflation. The highest bidder now gets it. And at the end of the day, it snowballs into social unrest. So now that the government has come out to identify this grave and grievous area of we losing revenue, losing our senses, the better for us. But the only thing is that we should be able to be religiously, to follow it religiously, so that it does not go out of
Talking about the government knowing this, because this brings me to my next question. Many will say the reason diesel is being sold for 1,000 naira is the taxes that was imposed recently on that very commodity.
Yes.
And many will also agree that such will definitely translate to what
it withers down. It withers down from the top.
So
it's just like you want to eat. It's just like you want to eat pepper soup, and you know your wife does not cook. Does not know how to cook. Tell your wife you need pepper soup. Your wife will tell the house girl to cook the pepper soup. It withers down the ladder like that. Once the house girl makes something, it is definitely that your wife that did it.
Okay, well, anyway, you're getting me more confused with your explanation, but let's remain with it now, because my wife can cook pepper soup. But let's remain with it now and ask you really, because let's look at even the impact of those taxes, especially on diesel, and look at the government talking about palliative, but rather taxes are there giving the fatal blow, and yet we're still talking about palliative. So is it that government have not really realized that what impact this multiple taxation seems to be having on us, rather than finding a relief in a different area? Would it not be wise to remove such taxes rather than the palliative being given?
Government is there to solve problems on a daily basis. What somebody did not notice notice yesterday, so another person can notice this today. If they of course they can actually notice, but they may not want to pay attention to it.
Okay.
Thinking that it may not be too important. But somebody that knows what it is. That is why you need experts on each of these segments. Somebody that knows what to do at any point in time. And I think these people are getting it right as it is now.
Okay.
The impact of taxes can never be overemphasized. Because that is where the government is making their money. They want to put more emphasis on it, and that is why they have increased the base, the base of revenue, that is tax collection.
But do you tax yourself out of this present quagmire, especially as it concerns?
No, you cannot tax yourself out of poverty. We are already a poor nation. You cannot still tax yourself out of it, because the more taxes you
will have less revenue coming in.
Yes, because the money is going to the private pocket of individual. What Nigeria is experiencing today is growth. We are not developing. There is a difference between development and growth in an economy. We are only growing. When individuals are very rich, the economy is growing. But when the nation as itself is rich enough, then there is development. What we are experiencing in Nigeria is growth. And that is why everybody is complaining that we cannot continue the way we are. So the taxes that we are being collected now, for every part, like when we have investment company, if you move from one level to the other, that man has already added his taxes, he already added his cost of production. Then you move to another level, that is the finishing point. That man is already adding his own tax and adding his own profit. You now move to the point of sales. That person too is already adding his own. And that was why they introduced that thing they call VAT, to remove all these things. That is sales tax and so many other taxes that were in circulation before they brought in the VAT. So now that the issue is the way it is now, that 190 taxes you say that have been removed.
Yes.
It's proposed, but definitely if they want the economy to run smoothly, they have to accept those proposals. All those monies that were being used before to pay those taxes cannot remain in the company for further development. And if it remains in the company for further development, it will force down the prices. Because what you are now throwing away before will now
generally come back.
Yes, generally come back. And instead of you to spend 20,000 in production, you're spending only 11 naira. It will only be a shy luck person that will keep the selling price at that very level it was. So when the prices always come down, it also impact on the
sales and the people at the end of it.
Exactly. That is, it will spiral.
But anyway, Colonel, you seem to be talking about the beauty of removing double taxation of taxes itself. Yes. But let's go to a report from Budget, a civic advocacy organization.
Yes,
now, just last week, they disclosed that the internally generated revenue of 36 states in Nigeria grew by almost 28.95%, if I could still remember. And what they mean is that it grew from 5.12 trillion naira in 2021 to about 6.6 trillion in just last year, in 2022. And then, well, undermining, they said about 17 states did not really grow their IGR within that period of time. But 19 states had strong showings as it concerns the internally generated revenue they were able to make. But my question now is, if we now go ahead with this proposed plan of removing about 190 of such taxes, and most of them are basically all centered around internally generated revenue of states, are we not going to affect the internally generated revenue of states that seems to be in that situation, and every of them running to Abuja for every penny?
There is no how you look at it. There is no how you look at it that those states will never be affected. Even if you increase these taxes to 500 different types of taxes, you only make money from investment. If you don't have investment, you don't make money. Most of these states are vulnerable. Most of them don't even have up to 10 companies. And that is where the internally generated revenue mostly come from. So where do you now get the money, even if you increase the number of taxes you are paying? Most of them believe in bring this money we share. The money generated by Lagos State alone, it's not because Lagos State is the government is a super governor or is a super human being. It is because of the number of companies that are there. If every company in Lagos pays 1,000 naira in a month, they will still make billions of naira. How many states have that opportunity? Okay, let's come back to our Delta here. Okay. Where are the companies growing in Delta today? All these are Asaba Textile Mill and so many companies in those days. Where are they now? Where is in Edo, they call it this rubber ball.
But how can the government create more of these companies if they do not have reasonable internally generated revenue base?
No, you don't need to use revenue base to build it. You don't need revenue don't need internally generated revenue to build those companies. The government can make even if you create a national park like they were trying to do in Delta, you don't need internally generated revenue to do that. Put it in the budget. And by the time you have it in the budget, and you something like the parks, they directly pay their taxes to the government. Now, if you open up the economy, if you bring in independent power projects, for example, you bring in modular refineries, for example, it will create employment capacity. And by the time people are employed, then people pay taxes. Yes. It comes back to you as an internally generated revenue. But if you don't have any of those things on ground, and you're expecting to generate revenue, it is not possible.
But I'm still going to look at this proposed plan and how it really is going to not just only affect a state, but also the federal. Because yesterday, during the presentation, the acting chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mr. Zach Adedeji, pledged to ensure the implementation of the recommendation of the committee as may apply pending the approval of Mr. President. And that's what they said. But we do know that each of these government agencies are being given
targets.
Yes, targets every year. And well, would this not also affect their targets and also give them a reason in not meeting their obligation? Because you are now telling them prune down the taxes, and these agencies are all giving target. The custom, for example, only overseeded their tax for the first time in 8 years just last year, and now you're bringing this recommendation. Is it not going to impact on the federal government revenue at the long run?
Instead of you making 20 million and only 5 million comes to your purse, why don't you just bring it to 10 million and make 6 million? At the end of the day, who is better off? The custom you refer to and the federal inland revenue, they can still meet all these targets if it is well policed. Have you seen? Oh, I don't want to indict anybody. Have you seen anybody in federal revenue that is living like a pauper? I don't think I have seen. Instead of those money to be going into individual pockets. That's what government wants to plug. They don't want those things to go into individual pockets.
Okay.
Let what is due to the government be due to the government. Now they have a tax system in place that you don't even need to go to the tax office to start filing your taxes. They now call it a Promax. They call it Promax. You sit in your office, you do all your projections, you fill the forms, you pay online. So in that situation now, there is no leakage anywhere. But people still find a way around it. Those are the things that the government should be implementing. Actually, if the Nigerians populace, we should need some respite, relief from the government.
Okay.
And if we don't do that, it will beef up people's anger. Because you cannot be working for 24 hours and you're earning salary for just 2 hours. Remove these taxes, the little ones that are available, make sure they are workable, make sure that people can access them, make sure that whatever that is due to be paid is paid. And there is one thing that they have done now, which is very, very okay. You cannot avoid taxes. You cannot say you have done this business, you are supposed to pay so much, you don't have the money, you want to go open another business. No. They will trace you and they will still transfer that money to the new one that you have opened. So it's a way of increasing the revenue base. Right? The government, as I am concerned, they are a coercive body that whatever they want to do, and they are religiously doing it, that nobody can go outside this something. It will definitely affect the federal government's income. But at the end of the day, it will be better off in the sense that when you plug all the loopholes, most of those monies will come in.
But you talked about workable,
Yes.
and that brings me to my next question, because I was wondering, how can these even fly through? Why I'm asking this is, now look at it, there's always separation of power, and when I mean separation of power, I'm not talking about the executive, judiciary, and the legislature, but rather separation of power and also issues of taxation when it comes to the federal, state, and the local government.
The law is always been there.
Just allow me to land, because I really want you to walk us through your thoughts on this. Now, definitely, the federal inland revenue seems to collect for the federal,
Yes.
and we have state entirely generated board that also take taxes for this on behalf of the state. Now, I wonder how this recommendation will work, because we do know that the federal does not control the state when it comes to the issue of revenue.
No.
Undermine the state have serious powers as it concerns that of the local government. So I'm only wondering, how can this movement be implemented? Can the federal government now stop the states on account of collecting their own revenue on the name of dealing with the issue of double taxation? Can they implement such? Can they force such? And are we not going to return to the era of going to the courts, just like we had in 2021, when 36 state governors took the federal government to court on account of the VAT? So how are you going to implement this? Rather than telling us hallelujah, are we not just close to the church gate?
No. The VAT issue cannot be compared with what is happening now. The argument then during the VAT era was, let the state be responsible for what they collected. Not, I will collect. There's somebody that will collect.
But are we not going to have legal fireworks when the federal government tends to want to implement that recommendation from this committee in keeping or holding taxes accruable to the states?
No, they will not hold the taxes accruable to the states.
Holding or preventing state governors
Once
from
the federal
collecting
government
tax
implements,
because they've already collected.
Once the federal government implements those recommendations, automatically it will wither down the ladder. It will wither down the ladder. Because if the companies are responsible to the federal, every other one, like the enterprises and co, are responsible to the state. So if you have reduced out of the federal, the inflow through some of the removal of all these taxes, it will also impact on the state. Because you cannot tell me that the state will pay higher taxes than the federal. It's not just possible. They may go to court, but I don't think there is any good ground for them to push the case through.
But would it be fair if the federal collects their tax and stop the state from collecting?
No, they cannot stop the state from collecting. The state will also scale down, just as the federal government is scaling down. That's what I'm saying. If you are removing 190, the 190 should also affect the state too. Do not also look at it from the angle that it is only the rise. The rise, there is this they call a tax right that the federal government is responsible for. If they reduce it by 50, then you that is paying 20% at the state level will also remain at 20%. No, you also come down, because it's a chain. It's a chain that once it affects the federal, it's also.
But I still find it difficult to see how the federal government will put through with this recommendation if the states have their own powers to generate and also take their taxes. But I'll plead with you to hold on. We'll continue on our talk, especially as it concerns that. But what we need to do now is still go on a break, and when we come back, more discussion centered on multiple taxation and the issue of how it has affected a whole lot of our businesses, and how the government, with that very recommendation coming from the committee yesterday, would definitely implement it. Let's go on a break now.